Hey everybody, Stinger here with a special message, a special thank you to the best Italian wrestling podcast. That's right, the best Italian wrestling podcast called Pro Wrestling Culture. Specifically, thank you to Aldo Fiadoni. All right, Aldo, awesome job, man. I guess you and I met in New York in 2019, and there were some tears shed there. Man, I love that. I love that. You know what? Real men can cry, bro. Let me tell you something. Man, means a lot that you watch, means a lot that this podcast is happening, and the pro wrestling culture appreciates Aldo Fiadoni. So be watching there. It's going to be showtime, and tune in to the podcast, Pro Wrestling Culture, because it's always showtime there from the Stinger.
Be there or be square. Be sure to check out Aldo. And may all of your stains be large ones.
Pro wrestling culture. Yeah.
It's showtime.
Episode of Pro Wrestling Culture, a new special episode for this podcast, this huge podcast with a huge friend, because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not alone. I'm the real Messiah, Aldo Fiadone, and here with me, the special guest of the evening, one of the shining talent of 2023, Ender Cara. Hi, Ender.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. I'm glad we could make this happen.
Thank you very much for being here on PWC. So, Ender, tell me anything about your beginnings of your career in professional wrestling.
Oh, that's a long time, or not so much of a long time ago, but like 6 years ago, I believe. I also remember the date. I started on the 31st of October 2016. Made my debut the 29th of January 2017. So at that time when I started, I had just graduated high school and all that, and then I was out working, and I remember being miserable, So I had like a moment of clarity in a way where I was like, why don't I just do what makes me happy? So becoming a pro wrestler had always been in the back of my mind since I started watching in 2005 when I was 8. So yeah, from there, like I said, I had that thought in my mind, and once things didn't really go according to plan with the job that I was working after graduating high school, I simply decided to do what makes me happy, and I found this wrestling school in Stockholm, and yeah, that's where my journey started, really.
Your journey started only 6 days before my birthday, because I born in 27th October. Yeah.
Amazing.
So, about your beginnings, do you
Yes.
have any inspiration for this road?
Back when I first started, I remember I didn't even see a match. I saw a segment, and it was Randy Orton with Cowboy Bob Orton, and
Yeah.
they were in the ring, cutting a promo, and then out of nowhere the bell rung, and Undertaker showed up, and I was hooked ever since. So then I simply made my research, and then I found guys like Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Jeff Hardy, and then from there, eventually, as I got older, I got into Prince Devitt from New Japan. and that's the time I realized I love the Japanese style of pro wrestling. So in the back of my mind when I first started, then my goal was to be in Japan and wrestle over there because of the way they view the sport over there, and a sport it is exactly. So yeah, I simply decided to basically dedicate my life to professional wrestling the first day I started because yeah, I was just in that position of life where I was I had the fuck it mentality in a way, and I just did whatever made me happy, and I didn't do it for anybody else or anything like that. So it was all about me since the start.
So you love Japan, and
Sure.
probably you spend the first part of the year in Japan, the first 6 months of the year in Japan for in over 30 matches for Big Japan
Yes,
Pro
sir.
Wrestling. So, what do you think about this experience? And if there is a chance to see you again in Japan,
Mm.
probably in Noah, All Japan, or New
Hmm.
Japan Pro Wrestling?
Yes. So coming or making it to Japan, that itself, like the way I see it, so I spent about 6 years on the indies over here in Europe. I traveled all over the world, really. In 2018, for example, I did actually travel to Los Angeles and I trained at the New Japan LA Dojo for 3 days with Katsuyori Shibata and his Young Lions at the time. And then I moved to the UK, stayed there for a total of 6 months. I moved to Germany, I stayed there for a total of 1 year. And I basically did all these different bookings all over Europe, and I made myself known in the European scene. And the way I see it to this day, even though like even back then I knew that everything I did, everything I went through was simply preparation in order to be in Japan. So whenever something didn't go my way in Europe or anything like that, I always would remind myself and say, it's all right, because I know where I'm headed. So knowing this already at a young age, I had also studied Japanese by myself and also at the university because in my head, I'm gonna end up there. So why don't I just learn the language right away? Might as well. It will make my life so much easier considering how hard that language can be. Um, so, and then eventually there was this time in WXW down in Germany where I faced both the Japanese wrestlers. And mind you, like when I was in England too, I had met Japanese wrestlers and I had spoken to them in Japanese and tried to practice and, get my name known. And so I had some contacts already at that time. And then when I did work with Fubinori Abe and Shigeru Irie in WXW, or Irie, for an example, he already had known who I was because I had met him in England back in 2019. But then I had the singles match against Abe and like basically in a way proved myself to him that I could hang with that type of talent, with that type of caliber of a wrestler. And then I had the match against Irie, who wasn't not too long, but like he knew my mentality, he knew my focus, he knew my determination better than most wrestlers that had known me for such a long time. And I remember they invited me over to Japan, and ever since that day in March 2000, whatever it was, uh, like we worked on it, and this was at a time where it was almost impossible to get into Japan unless you were a citizen over there. So we worked on that for the better part of 6 months minimum. And then I remember eventually, like, they opened up the borders and all that. And I was in Germany at the time because I had decided to come to Germany because I was kind of stuck in the mud in a way over here in Sweden. So I decided to go down to Germany for 3 weeks. And at that, during those 3 weeks, I did all the WXW bookings during that month. I trained at the academy every day, sometimes twice a day, and basically we solved and we went through the process while I was there. And I went to Japan in December that year, and I stayed up until February 1st. Came back to Sweden, did some shows here and there, here in Europe, and then eventually I went back again in April, and here we are. I just got back about less than a week ago.
Yeah.
No jet lag whatsoever, all good, fresh, ready to go. But overall, the experience over in Japan, it was very intense. But it was also something that I oh God, I can't even speak. Prepared for such a long time, because I always knew that I was gonna head that way anyways. So my mindset is what really made a difference here. Uh, and I truly believe that there's a specific level you can reach athletically as a wrestler, but I think, or I truly believe that 80% is just mindset. And I had
Okay.
the correct mindset. I had I had my focus. I was not there for vacation, or I was not there to just be there and then go back and then be like, oh, I wrestled in Japan. This is where my heart is. Even since a young age, even though like way back before wrestling, I would make school presentations about Japan. Like I was always obsessed with this country, with the culture, with the language, and all that. So to me, this is where my heart is. So, and I know for a fact that authenticity was caught with the Japanese audience as well, as the wrestlers, as the promoters, and they realized, wow, we've actually won the lottery here. We have Ender Kara with us, and this guy has, prepared for such a long time, and now he's here, and he's gonna go all in.
You answered to my next question before the
Mhm.
question itself.
I'm sorry, I'm
No,
known for like
no,
talking
no
too
worry,
much.
absolutely.
The Japanese
So
don't like that
between
though.
yes, because my next question should be the difference between European
Mm,
wrestling and Japan wrestling. But after your answer, I want to change my question in
sure.
difference between European wrestling and Italian wrestling,
Mm,
because I know you wrestle here in Italy for IWA
I
and
do.
probably in Spanish for Lucha Libre Barcelona.
Hmm. Yes.
Okay. And I want to know by you the difference between the rest of the Europe in Swedish, England, Germany, and
Mm,
the other part of the Europe with Spanish, Italy, Portugal. This difference with the audience and the wrestling itself, in particular after COVID-19.
right. So I can only speak from my experience, and
Yeah.
unfortunately I haven't wrestled in Portugal at this time, but maybe in the future. But as far as the difference, like I said earlier, I feel like I mean, some people can tell as well. Like that's almost the first thing they mention as soon as someone mentions the audience in Japan, and that's that they're quiet and they're respectful and they treat it as a sport. And they respect the competitors inside the ring, whether it's a comedy wrestling show or whatever. They're there to enjoy and observe. Meanwhile, over here in Europe, it can be a bit wild. You never know, and also um, the simplicity over in Japan, I think too, is something that people don't mention too often. Like there's a meaning behind everything we do. You know what I mean? Over in Europe, it's more like get your shit in a way. In most of the indies, and in terms of psychology and all that, like I'm very deep on psychology and people things making sense. And mattering, like if we're gonna do this, then we should not do this because that will make this one, like this particular sequence, look really bad, or make this particular person look bad, etc. It goes on and on. It's a very deep subject, really. But as far as like wrestling over in Japan, it's more like I said, respectful, and like I said, once again, treated as a sport, and that's what I prefer because I personally I'm a very serious competitor. So when I'm in there in the ring, I'm competing with the opposite person in that corner. So I don't even know how to furthermore explain this one. But it's a competition, really.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I see it. It's a competition, and that's about it, really, in my mind. I'm competing. I'm not saying in a way I'm performing as well, but like at the end of the day, it's a competition in my eyes. And there's this one saying that stuck with me ever since I heard it. Jushin Thunder Liger once said, "If you want to survive in a Japanese wrestling ring, you have to be able to kill your opponent if necessary. And this sounds really brutal and all that, but in a way I can see what he meant, especially after performing and competing over there. And I totally agree with that statement. Even though the first time I heard it, I agreed with it because I know the style over there. You know what I mean? It's very different from the rest of the world. It's a struggle through sport, basically.
So, about all of your experience, all of your time in the ring,
Yeah.
you appeared in the last number of Pro Wrestling Illustrated,
Yes, sir.
with like a top prospect of 2023. Congratulations for that.
Thank you
Also,
very much.
and they mention you like a sure fit for New Japan Pro Wrestling, provided WWE doesn't scoop him up first for its rumored NXT Europe member for the
Yes.
roster in the future. So, what do you feel after that mention on the number one wrestling magazine in the world, and in particular for being one of the top prospect, because they mention you like the best unsigned talent in Europe right now.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I'm. So I mentioned this to a bunch of wrestlers who asked me how things are where I was and all that, and I would always tell them like I feel numb because I always would say I'm on autopilot, so I didn't really have time to feel and soak it all in. I was just like, go go go, let's go. We're on the road. We're headed towards the right direction. Everything is going according to plan, etc. So when that first got out there and I saw the article and I read it, I didn't really like. I literally just I looked at the screen on my phone and I gave it a nod and that was it. And I went back to work. So I don't really I didn't see how big of an achievement that was up until like people would tell me like, hey, what's wrong with you, kind of. Um, and yeah, it did also mention about NXT Europe and New Japan, and I read that sentence and I already knew, like, I'm not stupid, obviously, like, I'm a businessman at the end of the day, but I already knew what I wanted to do, and that was New Japan because my goal and like on the top of the mountain is the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship, and I truly believe one day I'm gonna hold that title. That title is the background wallpaper on my computer. It's the wallpaper. It's
Sorry,
the
Elder.
wallpaper on my phone, etc. So that it's like I'm obsessed with this title, and this
Yeah.
title is the reason to why my parents don't have grandchildren. This title is the reason why I don't have a girlfriend or a wife or anything like that, because I'm dead set. Like my eyes are on this title and this company, and
And
that's yeah.
probably you are you are a huge head to the Bullet Club, the new Bullet Club.
So that's a funny story actually, but I cannot comment too much about this. But I have my contacts. Let's say that whether it's in the Bullet Club or the United Empire or Chaos or whatever.
Okay. Okay.
Um, I know eventually one day I'll be heading there, and who knows what happens. Like I cannot tell you anything, but I know for a fact that I will take over that junior division some way somehow.
In junior division, there is Francesco Akira, an Italian wrestling,
Yeah.
a part of Catch 2022 and United Empire. So, what do you think about a dream match for me in particular, for my friend Frank Mandolini? Hi, Frank. What do you think about that possibility to have a match
Mm.
between you and Francesco in New Japan?
I truly believe that would be like a full circle moment in a way. We've only met a couple of times in Denmark, and he has 2 victories over me. But this is before I was the cursed assassin too, so he hasn't really experienced the evolved Ender Kara, if that makes sense. So it will definitely be interesting, and I do have unfinished business with him.
Yeah.
So the possibility is honestly there. It's not impossible one bit, not whatsoever. Like it's a strong possibility that we will end up in the same ring one day, whether it's face to face or shoulder to shoulder. We'll see.
So, Ender, my last question about your goals, your main goal. You mentioned the wrestling in New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, do you have any dream opponent in New Japan right now, not only in junior division?
Obviously, Hiromu Takahashi for sure, number one on that list, and
Yeah.
Taiji Shimori. I'm not quite sure if Kenta counts as a junior anymore. He's more of an open weight kind of guy, right? But
I
I
think no. I think he's a heavyweight for
right,
all the open weight division in New Japan Strong. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. But for sure, those names pop up. Akira, as of course, I really need to avenge those losses, in my opinion. But not only in New Japan, I have a bunch of dream opponents, whether it's Pro Wrestling Noah and DDT, even All Japan Pro Wrestling, etc. I have my eyes on every single company. I'm looking for every single junior. I'm currently in Big Japan Pro Wrestling, not signed. I'm still a freelancer, mind you, and I love the element of surprise. So I can literally show up wherever I please. And I have my eyes on every single junior. It's not like I'm just focused on Big Japan right now, even though like that's where I'll probably will make my work known in Japan. But I can show up anywhere. And yeah, like I said, I'm a businessman, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, for sure, I have my eyes, like I said, on every single junior, but especially New Japan Pro Wrestling, because at the end of the day, that's where I want to end up, and that's where I will end up. Whether someone likes it or not, it's simply destined to be.
Absolutely. And thank
Yes,
you
sir.
very much. Thank you very much for your time here on PwC, for this huge conversation, for this interview. I'm very glad of this, and I'm very glad for spend my time with you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you once again, and thank you to all of the listeners of Pro Wrestling Culture. Bye.